Hello and welcome to the 2024 Weapons for Wellness event. My name is Iman Blow. I'm the founder of the Aspire to Inspire initiative, a former award-winning student athlete, and producer of this experience in partnership with USA Fencing. Weapons for Wellness is a proactive mental health awareness event, and the purpose is community engagement, enrichment, and awareness. As we are in the Olympic year, it seemed only right to center this year's discussion around the Olympic journey. This event consists of 3 interviews with current members of the Olympic movement representing different perspectives on Olympic qualification, the Olympic Games itself, and also the post-Olympic experience. In this interview, we have the pleasure speaking to Mariel Zagunis about the experience of being a multiple-time Olympian and Olympic medalist. Hello, Mariel.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thank you for making time to chat. So let's get into you. I'm going to give a little bit of a bio and background about Mariel if you don't know who she is. Mariel Zagunis is a 4-time Olympic medalist and 5-time Olympian from Portland, Oregon. She was born to 2 parents who were both Olympians in the sport of rowing. Her career as a saber fencer is defined by first. She was the first American fencer to win a junior world championships, the first fencer to hold 3 world championship titles in the same season, and most notably, the first fencer to become an individual Olympic champion in saber in the entire world, in women's saber in the entire world in 2004 during the Athens Games. Since her first Olympic debut, she has not only returned 4 additional times, but also amassed numerous accomplishments that cemented her status as one of the most successful athletes in fencing history and the single most decorated American Olympic fencer. Currently, she resides in her home state in Oregon with her 2 daughters and her husband. Welcome, Mario, once again.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. This is a really important topic, and especially as an Olympic year, there's a lot of athletes who are really grinding right now. So I'm glad that we're diving into this topic.
Yeah, I also am able to speak to Hadley, who is a fresh Olympic qualifier, someone who's never gone before. So we're getting to like a wide range of perspectives, and you've done it multiple times. So I know you have the like fresh experience, and then I've been here a couple times, but can I do it again? So I'm really excited to get your perspective on, you know, what it's like to be in that mindset first time and then repeatedly too. The first question just gets into your background as it pertains to mental health. So the question is just when were you introduced to mental health in general? And then more specifically, when were you introduced to mental hygiene? So the American Psychiatric Association has a little, you know, grand definition, I would say, that says that the art of persevering the mind against all incidences and influences calculated to deteriorate its qualities, impair its energies, or derange its movement is how they define mental hygiene. But I would define it simply as the things that you do to protect your mind and your, some might say like your spirit from the things that might derail you. So,
Right, which is very important. Yeah.
mental hygiene intro.
hmm hmm Which is important too, not just in like for the population at large, but athletes especially, and in such a mental game like fencing, like you could be at your top physical peak, but if you don't have that mental clarity, or you don't have that mental hygiene, like you were defining, then it's not going to work. It's like literally not going to work. You have to have a strong, clear mind. You have to have all the distractions shut out. And I think for me, it's luckily it has come kind of naturally throughout my career, especially at a young age. I think that I just enjoyed fencing so much as a young woman that I was just like, I'm here, I'm having fun. This is great. I know what to do. I'm like confident. There was never anything that was like deterring me or making me feel like super nervous or that I like couldn't do something. It was just like, I'm just going to do it. Like it never like it dawned on me that I couldn't do it until of course a couple of years in, when you start to face those major setbacks, and then you start to have all these kind of doubts and things leak in. So I think in the very beginning of my career and throughout the first couple of really big victories and records, some of the records that I was setting and the first that I was doing that you were talking about at that point, I mean, it just never occurred to me that there was such thing as sports psychology or mental hygiene, or that I needed to do something extra that wasn't automatically happening. So in that regard, I for sure was like very lucky and fortunate as an athlete just to kind of have that mindset naturally. But as I got older, as you get a target on your back, as you start to feel those external pressures, as all these things like start to come to light that maybe you were always there and you didn't realize, or weren't there before but are there now, that's when you really have to buckle down and like focus on your mental health, your mental hygiene, your sports psychology, all of those things that go into the mental game of fencing.
Yeah, I want to highlight something that you commented on, which was when you were in the beginning of your career, you had a lot of big successes and it kind of came natural for you to just keep succeeding. And then, you can't, not can't, but it's hard to always win or always be the Olympic gold medalist, especially outside the Olympic year. So then
Mhm.
it can kind of shake you to not have that same level of success, especially now that you're more years down the line. And I think
Yeah.
probably younger kids can relate to feeling like they're invincible when they were 14 or 15, but then as they invest more time, as they care more about it, as they become more skilled, those losses start to feel more stressing and they start to shake your confidence more. Is that kind of, part of that experience for you coming from being just so stable and then having
Mhm.
moments where you felt less stable, even though you were
That's
obviously more developed as an athlete?
Yeah, it's such a counterintuitive thing, right? You think like, oh, I'm going to have more experience. I'm going to learn from all of these, tournaments, all these wins, all these losses, how to keep going, keep getting better and better. But I think that it's a lot easier to get to the top than it is to stay at the top. Like it's not easy to do either, obviously. But I think that when you haven't done it before or achieved a certain level, and you just are striving and you're climbing and you're fighting and you're doing everything that you can to get to this goal, to reach a goal that you set for yourself, then you meet that expectation. It feels just like incredible. It feels otherworldly. You're just like, I can't believe I did it. Or I mean, I guess I can believe I did it. All this hard work has paid off, all this stuff. But then all of a sudden you're up at the top and you're like, well, what do I do now? Like, where do I go from here? Well, I want to do it again, or I want to keep climbing in this. But now there's not only the external expectations of everyone's now looking at you and expecting you to win, and like, again, target on your back kind of sensation, but then your internal struggle as well, where you're like, well, I've done it before, so I should be able to do it again. And if I don't, then like there's something wrong with me, because like I clearly am capable. You know what I mean? So you start to have this inner dialogue that you really have to watch out for. And I caution young and younger athletes alike to really pay attention to your internal dialogue. You have to pay attention to how you're talking to yourself, how you're treating yourself, and because those thoughts shape our worldview, they shape our actions, they shape that mind body connection that we have when we're out there on the strip. And it's so important to keep your mental force field as strong as possible. And if you can block out all those external expectations and external like distractions and things that might shake you a little bit, then you're still in there with yourself.
Yeah.
So if you aren't being kind to yourself and giving yourself some grace and some leeway when it comes to having a bad day, had bad practice, bad result, then you can't escape those thoughts, because those are your thoughts. You can block out everything else, but not that. So I think probably one of the most important pieces of advice is to pay attention to that internal dialogue and keep it positive and keep it light, and just keep on going, and make sure your deeds line up with your words. You know what I mean? Because that's, I think, another thing is like, I've met plenty of people, or heard, I guess I should say, heard plenty of people say, I want to be Olympic champion, but you practice 3 times a week, once a day.
It's not
It's
gonna.
you can say you want to be Olympic champion all you want, but I'm sorry, that's not going to get you there. You know what I mean? So there's also that thing where you need to set realistic expectations for yourself. They don't have to be like, super realistic. You need to take one
Like
at a
in
time.
par
You
with
can say
what
you
you're
can be 10
doing.
years old and say that you want to be Olympic champion. That's what I did. I was 10 years old and I said I want to be Olympic champion. Obviously, I wasn't going to wake up the next day and that was going to happen, but bit by bit, hold yourself accountable and you work towards those goals. And if you can say you want something all you want, but if you don't work towards it, then that's another story. So you have to be honest with yourself as well.
Absolutely, for sure.
Mhm.
I wanted to connect what you talked about with like internal and external dialogue, and kind of go back to the first Olympic Games for you. So, just for background, fencing's been around since, 1896, which was the first modern Olympics. However, women's saber just started to be an Olympic sport in the 21st century in 2004, the first games that you went to and you won. And I had discussions actually with some of the people who were part of that movement to allow women's saber to be in Olympics. And they were saying how some of the dialogue around why it shouldn't be is that women aren't fit for saber, it wouldn't be becoming of a woman, it would be too dangerous for women, kind of arguments you would hear maybe couple decades before, but they were happening in the 2000s. So my question for you is, what was it like navigating and succeeding in such a new style of fencing? Considering the oppositional history, did you experience any challenges as a women's saber fencer or as a women's athlete in general? And if so, what changes have you witnessed over your career so far with respect to that?
Yeah, it's a great question, especially for those younger women saber fencers who are out there today who just love saber and they never have known anything else. And they're like, yeah, I'm going to do this because it's fun and the weapon that fits, my personality and all that. But even when I started fencing in the 90s, it was like, I didn't, not that I didn't really know too much about fencing. They just handed me a foil and they said, okay, this is what you're going to do. I was like, okay, I was happy with it. And I competed in foil for like the first 3 or 4 years. And because at that point, like as you mentioned, women were not expected and or allowed to fence saber. There were no nationally sanctioned competitions in saber at the time that for women at the time that I started. So I just happily went along with foil. My coach, Ed Corfanti, was originally a saber fencer, even though he coached all three weapons at my club at the time. And when he took over the club, he decided to switch everybody to saber. He's like, all right, we're going to specialize in, what I know best, what he knows best. And so the foil got switched out for a saber. I absolutely loved it. And I was like, this is great. It fit me even more than foil, like I think fencing, I think I was born to fence. I really do. Just like my personality, my body type, like all of that stuff. But I was absolutely born to be a saber fencer among all the three weapons. So when I got to experience that for the first time, it just like everything clicked in a really awesome way. And again, I just, as being so young and naive, I'm just like, okay, like now this is what I'm doing. And I did foil and saber at the same time for a little bit and then eventually switched all the way over to saber. And I think just with a lot of things in life, it was right place, right time. Because then by the time I want to say like 13 or 14, I started traveling to senior women's saber world cups, which again previously weren't around. I think the first exhibition, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, was in 1999 at the World Championships is when they had the first like women's saber event. Maybe it's 98, but anywhere like very close to, the new century. And it's just like blows your mind that you think that women weren't allowed to be doing something, especially like as a sport. Um, but when I was traveling for the first time to these international competitions, I was a young kid. I was like I said, I was like 14, 15, and there were plenty of like grown adult women who had been fencing for a long time, had now taken up saber, were absolutely paving the way, not only on the US team, but internationally as well, to kind of be like, hey, like we can do this. We're actually really good at this. Like we can, showcase this weapon and show that we're able to do it, that we're not too weak, we're not too delicate, we're not all of those things because that's kind of what they were saying about saber fencers, as you mentioned. So there were actually a lot of trailblazers that came before me that I looked up to, not only on the US team, but internationally as well. And I was like, wow, like they seem so just like strong and like athletic and powerful. And that was like kind of what I was able to be exposed to at a young age. And so when again, it was right place, right time because Athens happened when I was 19 years old. So imagine, if I was in a little bit younger, a little bit older generation, maybe I wouldn't have the timing wouldn't have been right for me to make the team. So it all worked out in the end, but to be part of that history is something that's obviously very special. And since then, the discipline of women's saber has just like exponentially grown not only in numbers but in skill, and it's amazing to see. You have someone like me who competed into their late 30s, and then you have other 19, 20-year olds who are like winning world championships and stuff like that, and it's like really really cool to see that there's like such a big range of skill set. And it's awesome to watch. I mean, like the actions and the speed and the explosiveness and just everything that goes into being not just a fencer but a women's saber fencer. When I look at the field, I'm just so proud of how far we've come, because it's not just, this small little kind of satellite tournament that's happening anymore. It's like we got our numbers, we got our strength, we got a lot of formidable opponents out there, and it's really, really awesome to like see how much it's grown.
I like that. Like I can't really imagine being a part of like an emerging sport like that, but I guess it is really incredible to see how when you allow women to enter into this sport that men have been able to do for a long time, how they're able to grow in it and excel in it. Like you did, and like you said, like a lot of younger fencers are doing right now, or a lot of newer fencers are doing right now. And I guess to that point, as the sport's evolving, as it's changing, more people are getting into it. You have qualified for 5 teams. And so my question is, what was the difference between your first qualification and your most recent qualifications? How were the, physical or mental obstacles different the first time around versus the second time around, considering how you've changed as an athlete, even, how the environment's changed? Yeah, so what would you say the biggest differences is about how you were able to navigate those two experiences?
Oh, my first and my last is just, it's completely different universes. Oh man, it's wild. I mean, especially considering COVID and all that. But I guess if we start with the my first team, which was 20 years ago, which is like, again, just
More
wild
years
to think
than
about.
you had at the time.
I know exactly. That's it's so crazy. So I think a lot of, if people are watching this, they probably, a lot of people are aware of my road to Athens was not a typical road to qualify, where I actually didn't qualify at first. So uh, I had gotten accepted to University of Notre Dame and decided to defer my admission for a year so I could stay home and train, because again, just the timing. I graduated high school in '03, and then I just wanted to like make sure that I was going for this goal and putting everything in it, all my time, energy, and all that. So I dedicated my life, put my life on hold to like try to achieve this goal. And up until that point, like as I was mentioning at the top of the interview, it's like not that things came easy, like nothing ever came easy, but it was like, okay, I want to, win junior world championships. And here I go. I'm going to win junior world championships. Okay. I'm going to make the senior team. I made the senior team. Okay. Next goal is like the Olympic Games. Like, let's make so at that point, I hadn't suffered too many like major setbacks as far as like doubting myself or anything like that, but
It's your
not
confidence, like your belief
right.
that if
Like,
you worked hard and you did what you needed to do, then you'd be able to accomplish the goal.
mhm, which is a very fortunate thing to say. Of course, there were setbacks along the way. I mean, like, yeah, there countless. That's a whole other interview, is talking about like the setbacks and stuff like that and how you bounce back from that. But I think one of the biggest setbacks that I ever had to deal with was initially not making the team in 2004, because it was just like so shocking and surreal that I had come so close and then I just wasn't gonna go. And I was just like, that it just did not compute in my brain that that was even an option. And so at that point, I had already knew that I had the rest of the season and the rest of the summer to already have blocked out for this event. So I continued to train. I continued to compete as if I were going, because I had already dedicated myself, mentally, physically, all that stuff to that goal. And luckily, I had a lot of support like around me with my parents and my coach, and like a lot of my friends and teammates, just said, you could sit at home on the couch and like feel sorry for yourself, or you can make the most of it and like still try to just like see this season out and like make the best of it and like just see how well you can do, even if you're not going to go to Athens. And that's what I continued to do. So I stayed in the gym and I kept training, and I actually won my very first senior world cup in June, right before like the games and stuff like that. So that was a great like consolation prize kind of. I like felt like, oh, this is like still, you know feels good, and I know that I have the capability of winning a big tournament and stuff like that. And then to end up being selected as the alternate to go, and I actually got to compete in Athens and then ending up with the gold medal. I mean, it was just like a very much a Cinderella story with all of that. And so that was like just a really it just really proved that you just can't give up on that dream. Like you might not know when that time is going to come, even if you plan for it to be at a certain time and it doesn't happen the way you expect it to happen. That doesn't mean that it's not going to happen down the road or in a different way. And everything happens for a reason and all of that. So you just have to keep positive spin on things and keep your nose to the grindstone and keep working toward what's next. What's next? Okay, this wasn't meant to be. This didn't work out. How can I make the most of it? How can I set a different goal and like now work towards that? And just don't give up on yourself, and that's kind of how Athens was able to work out the way that it did. Because if I had gone home and just kind of like had a pity party, which I did for a hot second, but then I got back
Of
on
course,
track,
needed.
then I wouldn't have been prepared. I wouldn't have been prepared when that moment did arise and couldn't have seen that moment coming until it did. So I was glad that I, again, kept the positive dialogue going, monologue in my head and stuff like that. And with the support system too, made a really big difference. Defending, again, getting to the top, staying on top, defending in Beijing 4 years later was extremely difficult, probably more difficult, the most difficult, I would say, than, well, I'm not going to say it's the most difficult because they all have their unique challenges. Let's just say that. But if you fast forward to qualifying for Tokyo and having my fifth Olympic Games, I mean, there was a lot that happened in those years, and I think the coronavirus pandemic put a big strain on a lot of people's mental health,
Hmm.
and to feel like I was peaking, to feel like I was ready. I just won the World Cup in Athens the first weekend of March of 2020. That win qualified me to make the team, and it had been a long, long, hard grind coming back from having a child, finally feeling my groove again. That was the first World Cup that I had won in 4 years. And to say, okay, we're in the home stretch. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm feeling good finally again, after a hard couple of years. And then to go from, we got 4 months to go to we have 16 months to go, maybe if it even happens, was a big strain on my mental health. I think on a lot of people's mental health. But again, just try to keep it positive and took it as it came, as far as the announcements of like, okay, this is, when we're going to make a decision on if it's happening. Okay, now it's happening. This is the protocol around it. Okay, like you had to be really flexible in a time that the world was like not flexible at all, if that makes sense. It was like very rigid in what the rules were and everything, but you at the same time just kind of had to be flexible in your routine and working with what you had. And I was very stressed out at the time because you look at other countries in Europe and Asia where they set up these bubbles for everybody to continue to train and compete, not just in fencing, but like, in all sports, and be prepared. And I think going into Tokyo, I don't think everybody was on an even playing field as far as their preparation physically. Like there was no possible way that was going to be a fair fight. So it was up to me to kind of prepare myself mentally as best I could. And that's what I could control. So that's what I focused on.
Yeah, and I can imagine like if this happened, again, you talked about timing. If this happened when you were 19, you're about to go to college, there might be a lot more mental flexibility for you, or even just in terms of what you're doing with your life, because
Mm-hmm.
when you're a teenager, you have a lot unknown, but then
Yeah.
20 years later, a year of unknown break after already getting back your groove, you said, 4 years since you won the last tournament, that must be a lot more stressful for you to say, okay, am I going to even be the same fencer that I was a year ago? Am I going to have the
Right.
time to get myself back into the position to
Mm-hmm.
make the team? And it matters more because you
Mm-hmm.
spent all this time,
Yeah. Yeah.
and than someone who's
Exactly.
like, I could either go to college or make this team, and maybe I'll try again in 4 years and it'll be the same thing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, that's what,
Yeah.
least that's kind of what I can gather too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you're right. As you get older, you start to see the world in different ways and you gain more life experience. And um, yeah, it definitely hits different. Like you said, when you're 19 versus however old I was. I don't even know how old I was, 36, or whatever, 36. Yeah. So it's a big difference, and when you're doing it for yourself, but also not only that, but to support your family, you know what I mean? Like I think my world view of fencing and competing and training and just everything shifted monumentally after having my first daughter. It was just like, I'm doing it for so much more than myself now. And so when you do have those losses or those defeats or those tough moments where you might not agree with an outcome or something
Yeah.
like that, it affects more than just you. You can't just kind of like, or you can just, go back to the hotel after the competition and kind of like stew about it and then watch the video and learn from your mistakes and, all those things that you normally do. But then I remember, okay, well, now I'm going home and I have to like put all that in a box and, be excited and energetic and like not jet lagged and not injured and not sore to like hang out with this love of my life that's 1 year old waiting for me at home. You know what I mean? So it definitely changes your perspective and like the way things kind of impact you a lot, like after, and in my experience after having my daughter, because I was still competing, with her around and stuff. So
I remember seeing your daughter at a tournament. She was so cute. She was by your side then.
uh-huh.
I want to go deeper into that change for you, before and after kind of having your child. Um, and to kind of introduce it, I know for many female athletes, there's been a lot of discussion from Olympians, world champions. Um, there can be a lot of stigmas and challenges associated with navigating pregnancy, postpartum, and child rearing while continuing to aspire to success in their professions. Additionally, there's not a lot of support, whether it's in the general public or even in your own institutions, for people who are raising children. And you did have your first child back in 2017. Um, and then you were able to make the Olympic team again in 2020, 2021, like you said. In an interview with FIE, you said your greatest achievement was your daughter after giving birth and then going to Tokyo and still succeeding in fencing. So the question is, did you have any considerations or concerns regarding continuing your career pre and post pregnancy? How you're able to logistically and mentally navigate preparing for those obstacles that might have come up? And then finally, what was it like being able to pursue your career still and also be a mother?
Yeah, those are all really good questions because I think being pregnant, having a baby, trying to balance the work life mom balance with the mom guilt and all of that stuff. It's you hear about it, I guess, if you're paying attention, but until you actually experience it, you just like, I can't even believe that this is like how it goes in the best way, but also in the worst way. You know what I mean? And like you said, there's a lot of conversation out there now with a lot of big profile, big name female athletes who have, had kids and wanting to come back and their lack of support or like how they feel or mental health, postpartum depression, like all of these things that are like being talked about. And in my experience, it's just like, yeah, it's not being talked about. Like it is, but it's like not. And like until you go through it, you're just like, whoa, this is like insane. I can't believe people don't talk about this more. You know what I mean? Or I can't believe that like how it is now is quote like way better than it used to be even 10, 20 years ago. And I'm like, this is supposed to be better. Like, are you kidding me? So I don't want to put like a completely negative spin on it, but I did, outside of like the immediate support that I had of like my family, did not feel very supported as far as like society or just like coming back to my job or anything like that. And like, I'm just like, where's the safety net? It's like you're not almost, it felt very much to me in my experience that I was like punished for wanting to start a family and like do this. And it's just so insane that, I mean, obviously biologically it falls on the person who's having the baby, to like deal with those physical and mental and just everything gymnastics that you have to like go through to do
Yeah.
that. um because no hate to like male athletes, they work very hard and stuff as well, but like I'll never forget, I think it was Enzo Lafort who like won worlds, and it was like his wife had just given birth like 3 weeks prior or something like that, and it's like, go Enzo. But then it's like, if you were if the roles were reversed, there's no way you would win worlds after
Yeah.
having a 3 week old baby at home, if you're a woman. So it's just like, obviously I can't like fault the male race for that or anything, but it's just like so crazy how difficult it is for women to do that. And then not only that, when you're an athlete and fencing, I guess I can speak for fencing, but a lot of other sports as well, your maternity leave starts way before you even have the baby. You know what I mean? If you're at some other job that is like not physical or something, a lot of times, if you can or need to or whatever, you can work literally right up to the day before you give birth. You know what I mean? And then you figure it out, like how you're going to come back and like all that stuff. But like being in a physical occupation provides so many challenges for how long your break is, not only before the baby gets here but after. And I was very fortunate that like everything was so smooth and great. And, I didn't have any complications before, during, or after or anything like that. So I can't even imagine for those women that go through having to, come back from something like that. But still, you go through a lot mentally. And all of a sudden having just previously, fencing is like, it's my job, it's my passion. I'm giving all of my time and effort and energy into this, and I can stay later at practice to like stretch or do extra footwork. I can, if I'm tired, I can take a nap. If I, am injured, I can rest. If I'm, all of these things where it's just like, it's just kind of like your own focus, like on your own, like schedule and program and like what you're there to do for yourself. But you throw this other completely dependent being into it that you love with all of your heart and soul. And you're just like, well, I can't nap because my baby's not napping, or I have to go to practice even though I was up all night, getting 3 total hours of sleep, things like that, where it's just like, okay, now what do I do? Like, how do I balance that pull, like not only physically, but also like in my brain, there like wasn't as much space for fencing and for the mental aspect of everything that I needed to do as there was before, because I was like obsessed with this child that I had at home. I'm still obsessed with her because she's awesome. I'm obsessed with both of them. Let me just say I'm obsessed with both of them because they're awesome. But we're talking about, when I was coming back, and you just it's hard, not only again like the tough times when, okay, your kid's sick, so now you miss 3 days of practice, or you're traveling and you miss them, or again you're not sleeping, or you're not, there's all these things that you used to be able to control that you can't control as much anymore. And then maybe I don't want to stay a little that like extra time at practice to do that extra footwork because I want to make sure that I'm home to like
Like your
feed her dinner
priorities
and put her
become a little
down,
bit divided.
yeah, so you're very much pulled, a lot with mom guilt, like I'm not doing enough for my daughter, but then on the professional side of things, well, I'm not doing enough over here. And, and then at the same time, I'm trying to like navigate this road that I've never been down before. None of us had been down. My coach, me, my family, we had never done this as far as like my career was concerned. So there was a lot of trial and error as far as figuring out, the best way to be the most efficient with my time and energy. Whereas before I just kind of like grinded it out. I'm just like, whatever, I'm just gonna like do it. And like, I had my program and I knew exactly like what worked for me. But then I was a completely different person mentally and physically after having a baby. And it took a lot of time to figure that out. And luckily I had a good support system with my parents and everything, not only like supporting me, but like literally helping with childcare and stuff. But it was very, very difficult. And at the same time, you're starting from scratch. At the same time, I don't have a stipend. I don't have any points. I like haven't competed on the world, circuit for like a year or whatever, however long it was. And you got to navigate that too. So it's like it was a lot. It was a lot. And so to feel like I was finally getting there, back in the groove, or finding a groove, I should say, a new groove, um, leading up to Tokyo, and then having to like readjust again was something else. But we all went through it, and here we are.